Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap, powered by Business Freedom Advisors, the podcast for business owners who want to grow their business and enjoy their life. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Landis, creator of the TriMetric tracking system and author of Balancing Act. If you're tired of chasing success at the expense of your health, your marriage, or your peace of mind, you're in the right place. On this show, we help you track what really matters: business health, life quality, and leadership performance, all in one simple, powerful system. Because when those get out of sync, everything else starts to break down. Our goal here is to help you align it all so you can lead with clarity, scale with purpose, and finally enjoy the freedom you've been working so hard to create. And if it feels like no one's ever shown you how to pull that off, this podcast might just be the missing link you've been quietly searching for. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the TriMetric Roadmap Podcast, brought to you by Business Freedom Advisors. I'm Scott Landis. That's Jeff Jacob. And today we're taking executive performance out of theory. We've been doing it for a while, Jeff. And today we're putting it into a real world experience as much as we're able to do that today. Because when you walk into a founder-led company, you usually see one of a few patterns. Some founders are visionaries with really strong ideas. They see the future, but the company cannot consistently execute. They're missing some things. Some founders are better operators who can really get the things done. They just are workhorses and they work, get things done, but the business still feels like a job for them. They're kind of stuck in those patterns. And some founders are beginning to become integrated leaders where the vision is clear, the systems are strong, and the team can produce without everything running through the founder. That sounds nice. That's the difference between a founder-driven company and a system-driven company. So today, we're going to help founders to self-diagnose. Are you a bottlenecked visionary? Are you the trapped operator? Or are you becoming the integrated leader? So Jeff, let me start with you. When you walk into a founder-led company, how do you start to tell whether you're dealing with a bottleneck visionary, a trapped operator, or someone who's actually becoming an integrated leader? What do you usually see?
Yeah, if you know what signs to look for, it's pretty clear pretty quickly. We were having a meeting with a client who is in that step one of he's probably more in step two, the trapped operator, actually. And we were in a meeting with him this morning where he was getting interrupted over and over again and needing to answer the phone. And because there's workers that have questions, there's problems that he needs to solve, and because everything is running through him. You can look at visionaries or the bottleneck visionary. There's examples of that. You can see it pretty quickly when the staff is tired of all the changes. The staff doesn't know if the road that they're being led down is going to be the road they're being led down in a month. And so therefore they have a hard time really dedicating to the process that they're going through at this point. Or they're not clear on what the vision is. They're not clear on the direction. There's a lot of disclarity that happens with that bottleneck visionary. With the trapped operator, there's more of the tasks are all, even if there's a team around them, the tasks all have to go through them. And so there's signs that either there's the wrong people in place or that the operator is really the one holding everything back because everything has to go through them and they feel trapped in that space. And because, we're not getting into the becauses yet, but those are some of the signs of it. There's disclarity, there's overwork, there's interruptions, everything's an emergency that's coming to you. Those are some of the signs of either the bottleneck visionary or the trapped operator.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, those might be some of the signs, but ultimately we, as we've said before, are diagnostic forward. So we're not just gonna let what our eyes and ears tell us what to do, or what the founder's gut level instinct tells us what to do. We actually deep dive into a diagnostic process. Touch on that real quick.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You can tell when you're going in, and if you're trying to self-diagnose, those are some of the signs you look for. But we never do that. I mean, we can already tell when we're walking into a meeting with people where they are based on some of those signs. But to find true clarity on what things are being bottlenecked, what aspects are trapping the operator, to get clarity on that, we do the BHD, the Business Health Diagnostic. And there's actually a few diagnostics we use in those ranges, but we start with the BHD usually, and depending on the goal for the client. And what that brings is clarity on every avenue of the company, every area of the company, and in terms of the operations, the vision, the revenue stream, everything. And we can find out if what's holding them back is the not really knowing, having clarity or visibility into the numbers, not knowing how to read the numbers, not having a dashboard that really makes things clear for them, if that's it, or if it's a leadership issue or if it's a team issue, it all comes down to systems though. And the BHD is what helps us to really figure out what systems need to be in place to really bring this person to a place of being an integrated leader or a founder with freedom, getting to that stage where they don't just own a job, but they actually own a company.
Yeah, that's right. So this week I had the experience of we had a referral from one of our strategic partners, a wealth building firm. We work really well with wealth building firms who work on helping individuals grow their personal assets, personal balance sheet, personal wealth. And
Mhm.
when those individuals have a business, a lot of times as wealth advisory firms, they might have a lot of great insights, but they're not quite the experts on the business health that we are. So we partner really well with them. So
Yeah.
we have one of these partners that said, "Hey, we got this client. He owns a HVAC company. The I got to meet with him this week, and had the handoff between me and our strategic partner, and we're just talking really high level with the business owner, and I got the sense, and again, just first signs, the first read on it was, and he even self-diagnosed it this way. He would say he's in the trapped operator. Um, he's definitely not a bottleneck visionary. He's not really a visionary at all. He's more of an operator. He's been the business. You take him out of the business, he doesn't really have a business. Even though he's been doing it for close to 25 years, it's been a real career for him. It's been
Wow.
successful. It's paid for his family. I don't know all the details on his family, but typical situation we see is this guy. I believe he's in his upper 50s, younger 60s, somewhere in there. And so he's probably raised kids and paid for college. He's probably done really well. He probably has a nice house. Um, that is fine while you're in the career of it, and he owns a job, but he does not own a business. And here he
Mhm.
is thinking, he's talking to a wealth advisory firm, talking about what's going to happen in retirement, thinking about retirement. He's like, I even had this question with them. We got a rough valuation on the business. I said, well, if somebody came along and offered you a check for that, um, what's your sense of urgency like? He's like, I'd take it. I'm thinking, man, we could double the valuation if we just put a little work in, but he would take the just the small number. And I'm like, wait till he sees what we come back with on our next meeting. Um, because he's not even tapping into it. I mean, just think about that for a second. If you're running a business that cannot run without you, your business, that what you can get to sell that business, if somebody wanted to buy that business or acquire it from you, you're going to get a heavily discounted business. And I like to say this because it's really true, but it also sounds hyperbolic. So I'm a little, I worry about saying it because I don't want to sound like too flashy, but it really can be like winning the lottery. Like I remember growing up and following the lottery. Back then, it was like a reasonable number you could get your head around, like millions of dollars. Now it's like cajillions of dollars, and I can't even think about what that would be. But it's like winning
Yeah.
the lottery. If you can add a multi-million dollar uh, number to what your business is valued at right now, that's pretty exciting. I mean, and we're not talking about it's
Yeah.
going to take you 10 years. We usually are our business health diagnostic is usually projecting out 18 to 36 months what we think you can do. And we haven't run the numbers on this guy yet, Jeff, but we'll meet with him next week. And maybe, if you're listening to the podcast, stay tuned. We'll give an update on what this turned out. But typically what we see, if this one was between the 700,000 and 800,000 level, I'm expecting we're going to be showing him something, between the 1 to 2, maybe more $1 million valuation with putting in a basic level. Like, I'm not an HVAC technician. I'm sure this guy's a genius on when it comes to heating and cooling, and I don't know anything about that. But it doesn't matter if we're working with whatever kind of company we're working with, dental, healthcare, architecture, construction, whatever it is, the fundamentals of business that we deal with tell me that that's probably what we're going to be able to show him. And you mentioned we have a few different diagnostics. So with that
Yeah.
guy, I said, okay, cool. You've got some valuation numbers. He's been given, I think, 3 different valuations from 3 different sources, and they all were in the same ballpark. And the problem though is, if you take what he's been shown and you take it out to the market, uh, buyers of businesses are savvy. They're not just going to say, "Oh, I like your price tag on that, and I know that the valuation is probably right, but let me ask you a few questions." And they're going to dig and dig and dig, and they're going to every question that you answer. Oh, we don't have that yet. Oh, if I took a month off, that business would fall apart. Oh, okay. Well, that's going to cost you. The more that they ask questions, the lower that actual offer is going to be, unless you find some idiot out there who is willing to pay you top dollar for your business that doesn't run without you, you're stuck. Like, the valuation does not tell you the whole story. So I told him, we're going to look at this as if a buyer, the same way a buyer looks at the business. That's why we work with private equity companies, because we look at it from that lens, not just a typical, like business valuation software tool. It's a deep dive. We're looking for the
Mhm.
numbers. We're looking for the whatever they would look at to discount it. We give you the true valuation, and a deep dive that actually takes time. You don't just put it into a software and it spits out this number. That's out there with AI these days. You can get a pretty good idea what it could be. But our business health diagnostic is another level. So, anyways, we are meeting with him next week after getting some numbers from him, and then we'll ask him some more questions when we meet him. But in between, the Business Freedom Score is a great tool. And if you're listening, you can get your Business Freedom Score right now. This is going to not tell you a valuation of your business, but it's going to tell you, oh, here's some of the things that I should be looking at, I should be thinking through. So get freedomscore.com, and you get a Business Freedom Score, which is it's not a BHD light. It's kind of like this. It's another arrow in the quiver to kind of give you some diagnostic on your business. It's really good. You get an instant result. Takes you 5 minutes. Answer 10 questions. Get your business freedom score, and then you can actually book a call with us right there if you want to go get that full business health diagnostic. Um, but
Yeah,
all that
with what you're
said,
talking about with that guy, with
mhm,
what you were saying, most if you think about who's buying businesses, most people are not trying to buy jobs. If they are bringing in the funds or getting loans or whatever, if they're in the business of buying businesses, they're not buying jobs. And we've had a couple of people reach out to us who have purchased jobs that are have turned out to be not as good paying jobs as they thought,
mhm.
and we there's not a lot we can do with people at the lower end of that. Um, and so that, like, one client we didn't take on because of that aspect. But most people who are buying businesses are buying the business, not the job. And so in the valuation, you have to make sure you're adding in, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to do their own, they're going to run their own numbers to purchase it. And this is part of what I love about working with people who are trying to create an exit plan. but you have to add in the what's it going to cost for the new owner to hire out that role that the previous owner
Mm-hmm.
has been doing. And the more you're able to have systems that take over that role, the less money you're having to put it back into it. And the problem with having to put money into it is it takes away, not, let's say you're hiring somebody for $100,000 a year. You have to take that away from the multiplier as well. So if you're getting a 5x multiplier on your company and you're having to put $100,000 a year back in, that's $500,000 you're taking out of the valuation of the company and what somebody's willing to pay for it. Somebody who's savvy in any way, which most business purchasers are, that's $500,000 in that you're removing. And
Mm-hmm.
then part of what we do with them is making it so that that multiplier goes up. And so instead of a 5x multiplier, you're getting a 7x or a 10x even
Mm-hmm.
multiplier. Can be higher than that, but 10x is the biggest we've done. And with the 10x, that's $1 million that you're then adding back in. If you solve that problem, then you add that back into the valuation of the company and the cash that you're getting at sale. And as the numbers get bigger, it is exponential of what that
Mm-hmm.
does. And so therefore, it's incredibly important to be able to think about it ahead of time, to build in the systems. And it can actually be done, pretty quickly. Like you said, 18 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of it can be less, but
Yeah.
one client, we did some work that helped him out in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, it's unbelievable what it adds up to. Like you were talking about winning the lottery kind of thing. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like that for people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it would feel like that for me, whether or not it feels like that for our clients, because it does require some work. It's not like you just, bought a $2 ticket and you won a $2 million lottery check, right? But
Right.
it is in the similar ballpark of what that number could do for your life or your rest of your life, your retirement. And just kind of bounce off of what you were saying. So yeah, you often say there's a little bit of an art to it, but it is a very scientific process. It is a
Mhm.
that you just did a great job articulating and walking through. Like, okay, you can start with this, and then you can add back these things, and that's kind of it's almost like as you describe it, it almost sounds like a fun game,
It is
like
for
a
me.
family
Yeah.
family game night. And here's the rules. If you know the rules of the game and you can play the game and you can start to like I'm thinking about Monopoly. Like if you know the rules of the game and you've practiced it enough times, you can run that board. And there's some strategy and skill. It's not just random chance. There's some that because you can't control the dice roll, but you have a strategy and you can play the game and you can, some guys are always with the houses and hotels and some people are like going bankrupt. You want to be the other one, right? You want to be the one who's kind of knows the rules of the game and is growing and building wealth. And it's a scientific process. Most of the business owners that we talk to, I'd say most business owners out there, whether or not we talk to them, most of us out there are running business by our bank account or a gut check or the way it feels or the way we project and plan. Us visionary ones are like always living in the future, and we kind of get in love with the future and think, well, you know that's great, but what's today look like? Today not so great. The scientific process, and that's why having a CFO is so important. Even if you can't afford a whole CFO, you can afford a fractional executive unit. That's what business freedom advisors do. So I did want you to touch again. You mentioned it on we had a client experience where within a few months they were getting an offer on the business, and then within a few months, and just moving the pieces on the board, not really doing a whole lot of work, but just presenting it properly. It made a big difference. Maybe not millions, but it made a big difference within less than a couple months. What was that?
It made a huge difference. And a big part of it is the curb appeal, if we're putting housing terms into it, a metaphor. But the curb appeal of the business. People want to buy a business that they don't have to remodel, And so, well, most people, some people want to do flips, and therefore they're looking for businesses that are jacked up and they can change. That's not, but you're not going to get much money off of that. Those people are trying to lowball you. If you're
Yeah.
trying to get top dollar for your business, you can do that work or have us do that work to get it up and running in a place where the curb appeal is people are walking in saying, I want this. This is the life I want. And and with that one client, with that was the first one we ever did for an exit planning one. And you'd already been working with him for a while, but then we brought in the financial side of it. And so he was to the point of actually people wanting to buy his business. And he got offered $950,000 without the property. And then in a few months, we raised up the curb appeal without changing any of the processes he had to go through. It was the back end processes that he didn't have any hands in. And so editing some of that, which happened pretty quickly, and then we did the negotiation with the buyer, but then he was offered 3.6 million after that. And just by raising up the curb appeal and showing people that he actually knows what he's doing running this business, and that part of it is that raised the multiplier he was able to get. And it raised the amount of money that was well, you had already worked with him to raise the amount of money that was coming in, but all we did was raise the curb appeal, which raised the multiplier, which made it so that he was able to get that 3.6 rather than 9.5.
Nine 950, less than a million to
Oh yeah,
3.6.
not 9.5, 9,500,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but less than a million to 3.6 million with
Hmm.
curb appeal. So let me just
Right.
some of us need to, go even more dumbed down. I represent that crowd here. So, what are we talking about when we say curb appeal? So here, when it comes to the business, if somebody, again, you got to put yourself in the buyer's perspective. They are
Hmm.
looking, they don't want to lose money. Like that's the number one rule of Warren Buffett. Don't lose money, right? So they are, I don't want to say terrified of losing money, but they are certainly very, very concerned and, cognizant about, okay, no matter what, I don't want to lose money. And number two, I definitely want to make some money. So uh, if you go into a business and the books are kind of out of order, you might think, oh, I'm on QuickBooks and I can produce a P&L. If you haven't had a buyer look at your QuickBooks, you probably don't necessarily know what we're talking about. But Jeff could articulate it better. It's about running the business by numbers rather than what an accountant or what the IRS might want to see it organized. It's a totally different way. So if your business is not at a place where it indicates, oh, this business owner runs their business by their books and their numbers are good and they know how to run a business the way that a good operator does, that's curb appeal. If they go in there and they look at it and they're
Hmm.
like, oh, um, you know, let's just assume that you're doing fairly good on your bookkeeping and accounting and you file your taxes and do all the basics and they just see some basic level accounting practices, but not cost accounting or managerial accounting that business owners, true business owners, operators know or organize their books to be able to make financial decision and business decision based on the numbers. That is a red flag. They're going to say, well, if they don't have their books together the way that it should be, then what else is going wrong in the business? They probably don't have good SOPs. They probably blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, if you flip that script and you say, and they come in and they say, man, these books are stellar. They obviously are running things. And that could be putting lipstick on a pig, just like if you took your house before and after, and all you did was clean up the yard and put a little paint on the gutters. It just gives that first impression that puts in the mind of the buyer, oh, I'm probably not going to lose money on this thing. Where are the opportunities where I can make money? It's where you want their mindset to be if you're looking get the top dollar for your business.
Absolutely. And so what's your question of how do we do that?
Well, no, I just will pause to see if you had anything to add, but I do have a different question if you are ready to
Yeah,
shift
no, if
gears.
you can't, if it starts with cleaning up the books, and
Mhm.
that's a complicated process,
Mhm.
because you have to figure out what's not in the category that it really should be in. But when I started taking accounting classes, I was kind of bored with it because it's all about accountants are taught to be compliant and reduce risk with everything. And that's important. That needs to happen. But you can be compliant and reduce risk while also giving numbers, presenting numbers in a way that makes it so that business owners can be informed in their decisions. And that's what managerial accounting really comes down to. And you can't ignore the numbers to run a business. That's you're flying blind that way. But you also can't just run a business by the numbers. There has to be a mix in there and of your gut, your feelings, but also informed by the truth and the reality of where we are, where we project to be.
Mhm.
And so therefore being able to have the visibility that makes sense to the specific owner's mind, and that's where some of the art comes into play, is really working with somebody to figure out what works for you in this.
Mhm.
And we have templates that we then edit, and so we have a template of here's how we would set it up. But if this doesn't make sense to you, we're going to edit it for you because it has to make sense to the owner and the people making decisions. And so therefore it gets reorganized, it gets set up right, it becomes clear. And then we have dashboards that we've created to make it so that people can have um, just a constant view of where those
Mhm.
things stand that inform the decisions so that the owner then can make a gut decision informed by the numbers to be able to merge those together and move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to give a quick plug to the dashboard, I mean, I think most business owners who are probably, maybe listening to TriMetric Roadmap Podcast or something like that, are kind of dreaming of, oh yeah, I would love to have my books in order, but what I fantasize about is a dashboard that's updated real time and it gives me the exact information that I want that I could just look at a glance. You might have read something about this in a book and you're like, that would be awesome, but you have no idea how to put it together. Just to give a quick plug, have a conversation with Jeff and he'll probably point you in the right direction. I can't even speak to it. That's Jeff's department. But I do want to shift gears real quick, Jeff. So you mentioned a little earlier ago, and I don't want to let this, if this is lingering in the mind of our listener, you said um, there's not a lot we can do for that situation. And you didn't go into
Mm,
detail, but I want that person who might be like, oh crap, what, because I think I think we're a lot of times our own worst critic, and maybe I'm thinking worse about my business than it actually is. And you said that there's not a lot you can do for me, and I just immediately, look down and say, "Oh, I guess that's probably me." So I want you to speak to that person who may have heard you say that and is thinking, "Wow, I wonder if maybe I'm too far gone. Maybe I'm a lost cause." And even the one that you were referring to, we probably could do some stuff for them, right? But when you said that, I know you had a particular case in mind, but could you speak to the person who might be resonating with that, being like, "Oh crap, am I the person that there's not a lot you can do for?" Put that person at ease or give them some steps. Like, what does that situation look like, and then give them some next steps.
yeah. If you're working a full-time job and have mortgaged your house to be able to buy a business that isn't profitable and is losing money every month, and therefore you're just going more and more into debt, that's going to be that's the situation this guy was in. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not what limited us. That was a it's a really bad situation, and people need saving out of that, and we can help with that, of course. What limited him was that would get me sidetracked into the whirlwind, but we all have a whirlwind of tasks, of duties that just draw us in. The email sucks us in. The whirlwind draws everything around it in. And so it's just a big whirlwind of tasks that take up all of our time. And so, and everybody has a whirlwind of whatever it is. And so reducing that whirlwind and so creating systems that reduce the whirlwind of time suck and then be able so that you can actually work on the business is a key element that we work with people on. And the systems are what really reduces that whirlwind so that they can then keep investing more and more time into the development of the organization or just the development of their lifestyle if they want. And so reducing the whirlwind is a huge foundational element of that. That if you're not this, what that guy that we're talking about, he wasn't willing to put the work in to reduce the whirlwind,
Mhm.
and that was the key. He wasn't willing to put effort into implementing systems that would even work with us to implement those systems for him,
Mhm.
that to make it so that he can create the life that he really wants. And therefore, I mean, we probably could, but that's not the kind of people that we're going to spend time with because they're not willing to
Right.
change
Yeah.
in their life and
We can't
grow. Yeah.
we can't try to run faster than you're willing to run, right? We can walk with you, we can take a lot of the stuff off your plate, but if you're not willing to put in any effort, then it's kind of hard for us to help you. So that's not obviously the person like that's not going to be listening to this show. So if you're listening to this show, keep listening in. We give value every week. We give you tools, we give you things to think about. And of course, we ultimately do want to help you. That's why we have the free tools like the business freedom score at getfreedomscore.com. We have the TriMetric quiz. You can always do a BHD like for you. Um, but yeah, just keep if feel encouraged and know that keep if you're here, if you're listening, keep showing up, and we're gonna get through this. It does require some effort. And I have no idea where we are in time because I forgot to set the timer, Jeff, but it feels like we're about to wrap up. So I'll go ahead and do that unless you had something else to add.
No, it's if you're in a place where you are hitting some roadblocks and don't know how or don't have the time to get through those roadblocks, but you want to and are willing to grow to get through that, then that's where our wheelhouse of being able to help you. That's it, and
Mhm.
it does start with that diagnostic, and our heart really is to bring freedom to founders so that your schedule doesn't create your life, that you can create the life that you want.
Mhm.
That's the goal, and that is actually possible.
Yep, it's in our name, Business Freedom Advisors, and the TriMetric Roadmap is the path that you need to get there. That's why we keep showing up every week to talk about this stuff. So the big takeaway from today is most founders, they're not stuck because they're lazy or unclear or incapable. They're stuck because the business is still depending on them in the wrong way. Some founders are bottleneck visionaries, like we talked about, with strong ideas, weak systems, and a team that struggles to execute consistently around them. And some are more like the trapped operator. They have strong execution personally, but the business still feels like it's a job. It's just kind of stuck with them. So our goal is to become the integrated leader, move through the founder leadership spectrum that we talked about a few episodes ago, get a clear vision, strong systems, and a team that can produce without everything running through you. So that's what the executive performance is all about. That's what we've been talking about in the last several episodes of this series. So the bridge between leadership and management, where leadership creates clarity, management creates control, and the executive performance system turns both into results. And once that leadership infrastructure starts working for you, then the next question just becomes, where do we focus on improvement? Because the founder freedom is built, it's not built on theory, it's built on improving the specific levers that make the business healthier, more profitable, less dependent on you, and more valuable for you. So next week, we're going to shift gears. We've been talking about executive performance for a while, and we're going to start to talk about the 5 freedom levers. These are the levers that you can pull on, that you can use to do the least amount of work to make the biggest result. And there's 5 freedom levers. In shorthand, we call them, keep it, know it, run it, grow it, and fund it. And we're going to break down what all 5 of those freedom levers are, because if you understand what the lever is that you can pull on to make the biggest difference to help you get through that founder leadership leadership spectrum to go from operator to coordinator to conductor, then these are the areas where founder-led companies can start turning business performance into actual freedom, value, and optionality. So no matter where you are in your business journey, stay tuned, because the 5 freedom levers are going to help you get to the next level. Jeff, thanks for hanging out with me again today. We'll do it again next week.
Love it. See you soon, Scott.
Thanks for listening to the TriMetric Roadmap powered by Business Freedom Advisors. I've been your host, Scott Landis. If you're growing a business but something still feels off, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created the TriMetric Quiz. It's not a personality test, it's a powerful diagnostic tool that shows you where you're in alignment and where things may be silently slipping off track across your business, life, and leadership. It only takes a few minutes, and the clarity you'll gain is a game changer. Go to TriMetricQuiz.com to take the quiz now before the cost of staying stuck gets any higher. Until next time, stay focused, stay aligned, and keep building a business that truly supports your life.